Welcome to the Arrow Podcast. My name is Chris Mulvaney. Today I have Tom Angelo from HBK with us. Let's get rolling. So Tom, tell me a little bit about HBK and what you guys do there.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Chris. HBK is a top 50 CPA and consulting firm. We specialize in working with mid-market entrepreneurial families and their businesses. We were established in 1949, so this is our 75th anniversary, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, so a long time. We've got a couple core business lines, obviously a core CPA firm, which might think traditionally the folks that do tax and audits and other financial service work. We have a fairly large registered investment advisory business, which our high net worth clients come to and invest their assets, and we manage and plan out their retirement. And then we have a fairly large technology practice where smaller businesses and lower middle market businesses kind of outsource their IT to us. So
interesting. That's an interesting mix there.
It is. I mean, we continue to add different service lines that we think complement the larger small business or lower middle market business. We kind of look at it as this managed workplace environment where lets a business owner concentrate on their core functions, whether it be developing a product or concentrating on their service, and then all the ancillary components of their business, what can they give to HBK?
Right.
So, coming this August, we're actually adding outsourced HR.
Oh, that's great.
We currently have outsourced accounting, and outsourced IT. So if you think about it, those are three core components of every
necessities,
business.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But often very much headaches for business owners.
Right.
We can take that off their plate so they can focus on the things that are important. We've got close to 675 employees,
wow.
In about 5 states where we're located. And I've only been with the firm for 5 years.
Got it. Okay. And so how did you get into HBK specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the story kind of starts, started at a small CPA firm out of college, had 4 people.
And you're a CPA?
I am a CPA,
okay.
At least last time I checked on the website.
There you go.
So, I started there. We were really, really small. And, from there, I became a partner pretty early. I think I was 28.
Okay.
So I got an opportunity to have equity in that company. From there, we built that over, a period of 12, 13 years, maybe more than that. I was 15 years. And we got to a point where we were about 35, 40 people. Wow. Before we merged into HBK.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so now, you recently talked about these services that you're adding on, like the HR specifically. Is that done through acquisition or strategic hires?
A little of both. So like, for example, the IT business actually was started when, we were in a smaller firm. I think it was around 2011. And we're getting demands from our clients, like indicating, hey, we really can't get good IT support and we don't know what to do with this. And we sort of had this vision and said, why can't we provide this service? So that really started with hiring one employee and saying to them, hey, we're going to just incubate this business,
right.
Which is actually, as is probably the typical hard way to do it.
It's really challenging. Yeah. Because you're starting from scratch, right?
So it's like we have one employee, 0 clients,
but you do have a client pool, right?
We did have a client pool,
right,
which was helpful. So, little by little, it was just like talking to our existing clients and saying we offer this and then building out, that portfolio. And then little by little that grew. So by the time we merged into HBK, the IT business itself had about 9 employees separately, just doing that. And then since then, we merged that into HBK. We've done a series of M&A transactions that has grown that business to like 70 people.
That's great.
But like, for example, with HR, we're going to do a small acquisition, a real boutique style firm, get the talent in.
Yep.
And then we feel like our ability to sort of create value for them in a smaller business is, hey, we have all these clients. We also have, some methodologies around how to cross-sell and how to, bring them in the right opportunities that we think that we can expand and give them opportunity to grow their business as well.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's awesome. So with these separate are they separate entities? Are they all HBK? Are they their own brands or?
Yeah, in some cases we have created, we call them, so the master brand of HBK, and then, our wealth management firm is called HBKS Wealth Advisors. Our IT firm is called Vertilocity, because we just need a cooler name than
right.
just HBK.
Right. Yeah.
So that brand, but we kind of consider them sub brands under the master brand, might say Vertilocity and HBK company. So that's tied back to our brand. Oftentimes, like for instance, in the tech space, the brand identity and the name, have some correlation to like what we do.
Right.
So we feel like that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there are obviously some core services that are part of the HBK umbrella that we just put in HBK, like outsourced accounting and things like that.
Right.
But yes, I mean, ultimately it's all rolled up under one.
Interesting. Very cool. So as a growing business, and an evolving business, there's a lot of challenges that you have to overcome. What has been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in the past 5 years? And how you're a CEO right now of HBK, right?
Well, technically, I'm taking over September 1st.
Okay, you're taking over as CEO, right?
Yeah.
So and so now, what's your title now?
I'm the partner in charge of the Mid-Atlantic region. So we consider that our Philly, New Jersey, New York market, which we have 4 offices and about 140 people in this region that I'm responsible for.
And how many partners are there in HBK?
So we have about 60 partners.
Okay,
in total.
So you share in some of those challenges, obviously,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. It's not all weighted on me for sure.
Yes. No, it's just magical, right? You need support. You need humans to do business. But so, what was the biggest challenge you've had to overcome in the past 5 years? And I'll also caveat this and say outside of COVID, because I think that was a challenge for everybody, right?
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's an indirect relationship to COVID, but the accounting industry in general is suffering from a major pipeline problem of, there's just not enough young people wanting to go into our profession. A lot of it's been blamed on some technical things around how many credits they need to get in college, and is that too much of an obstacle for them because they have to get 150 credits to take the CPA exam, and you obviously only need to graduate with 120, so it forces them to do more. I don't think that's the major problem, and I think what our industry has created a little bit of a stigma around, you're a CPA and you're going to work all these hours in busy season, and there's all these other opportunities out there for young people that, hey, you don't have to work on a weekend and you don't have to work at night.
Right.
So I think just the talent acquisition component of our business has been one of the largest challenges, is to create enough opportunity and a good culture that they want to do this, that they see opportunity, they see a future. And it may not always be that they want to become a partner or an owner in a business, because I don't think that's for everybody.
Right.
I'm sure you see that as well.
Yep. Yeah.
But they want to see that they have a path and that they're going to, earn good money, and they're going to be competitive, and they're going to really like what they do. But finding and keeping those folks has always been, we are a people business. I mean, our assets leave the office every single day.
Right. That's
right. We don't have products on the shelf. We don't have an inventory in a warehouse. Right. So it's just all of our intellectual property walks out the door every single night.
That definitely makes it a challenge.
Right. And we need them to come back in,
exactly. And be happy. Right.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And I also think just the pivot in our marketplace. I mean, accountants have been around forever, and I think everybody just associates them with, you can't, growing up and even today, like you can't go to a party and then someone not asking you a tax question thinking that that's all you do.
Right.
And I think the messaging around, wait, no, we are advisors. I mean, we're at the table when our clients are selling their business, when they're buying another business, when they, are going through, getting married, or they're going to be divorced, or there's deaths in the family. Like, we are those folks that are kind of advising them through that financial journey on any of those like major components of their business or their life. And we're not just the people putting the numbers on a tax form.
Right.
And that's a big distinction where we try to make with people, is that, no, I mean, we are the advisors. We are often the people that our cell phones ring on a Sunday because, a business owner's got a challenge.
Right.
And, who are they going to call?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. So before you mentioned mid-market, like medium-sized businesses, I think everybody has a different description or understanding of what that means, right? So if you were to put a little bit more color there, like gross revenue, employee count, even industries of focus, if there is any, like where's your sweet spot when you're dealing with clients, or your average ideal client sit?
So we've actually moved or we're pivoting to a model of what we call industry solution groups. So typically, if you thought we have 17 offices in several states.
Wow.
And prior, each of those offices went to market for whatever kind of business they could get.
Got it.
We've now pivoted to this industry solution group model where we've created teams within the firm that could be, 3 people in Florida, 2 people in Ohio, 5 people in New Jersey, whatever it might be. But, we have, let's say, a construction niche, a manufacturing and distribution.
Yep.
Cannabis is one of ours, dealerships, not-for-profits, manufacturing and construction. So not that we don't do other focuses, because we certainly like real estate, hospitality, transportation, and logistics are all in our wheelhouse, but we go to market as those industry kind of solutions, and then kind of build the services underneath underneath that. But for us, as we've grown, we've sort of realized that not every client fits our model, right? We have a team-based approach. You're not coming and just buying Tom, Tom's my guy, or Joe's my guy. You've got that team. So for that to work, there's probably a certain revenue kind of threshold. And, I think our sweet spot is that, maybe 10 million to $150 million sort of privately held, enterprise, often it's multi-generational, family owned.
We're right in the same wheelhouse there. 10 to 150, family owned, second or third generation's ideal. You know, manufacturing, B2B service-based companies are our sweet spot.
Yeah. Most of ours are B2B. We don't have a very big presence in, let's say, the consumer style outside of like hospitality. So, we do have a number of multi-owner restaurant groups and, hotels. But for the most part, we have a lot of service-based businesses, right? So, or manufacturing or construction or, those kinds of things. But again, I think that for us to provide the most value to the client, they need to be at a certain size to, one, be able to, where we can provide those services and not feel like that we're squeezing the price point with them. And oftentimes if we're, if that client is just, hey, they've chosen like a lifestyle business and that's perfectly fine. Maybe at some point we say, look, would you be better served by the 2 or 3 person CPA firm down the street?
Right.
You really just want your tax return done.
Right.
And that might not work for us.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And so why are you getting business? Like, why are people coming to you guys, and transitioning out of their current firm?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's 2 main reasons why people change, right? And CPA firm relationships are the last to go. People will live with a miserable CPA firm relationship.
It's scary, right? I've changed a few times. It's like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? I hope he doesn't mess it up. I don't want to get audited because he forgot to do something, right?
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think people are protective. There's like a financial intimacy to
100%. Yeah.
Right. It's like, you have your own personal vulnerabilities that you choose not to discuss with people. A lot of people don't really want to like now retell their financial story,
right?
And maybe open up and say like where things are not good, or where things, or how much money they have, or how little they have, or where it is, and maybe they just don't want to restart that conversation, so they live with misery until it almost like causes issues.
Right.
I think for us, there's a personal connection with either, the lead or the team that's working. So provide, it's cliche, but like providing the best possible service and availability to that client is often where we remain stickiest, right? Like not changing the people that are working on their account, like making sure that there's a continuity that we're not re-asking the same questions year after year, like that we really do understand them and their business and like the interdynamics of their family relationship, like which kids are coming in the business and why are the other kids not coming in? Is there an issue? Like we understand that, right? And I think that's what keeps us, connected. And they call us for just a variety of things that don't even have anything to do with accounting.
Right.
But providing that kind of,
white
trusted
glove service
is a key. And I think the more you move up market, right? So the larger the business, the more sophisticated the client is, and more sophisticated their people that work for them, right? They end up having CFOs, and you can't fake it before you make it when the client is almost as knowledgeable as you might be.
Right.
So having that deep rooted expertise, like for example, if I got a lead for a sort of a mid-sized construction company, I would never serve it. I don't do construction companies, but I would bring the construction team in who that's all they do.
Right.
And they know all the ins and outs of contractors. They understand what their financials look like, how they make money. They have a profitability model that they can run it through to say, hey, why is your gross margin on jobs like 7% less than the industry standard. Here's what we think, offering them areas where it's not just, again, the tax return. It's how can we improve your profitability?
Right. Yeah, no, that's great.
You know?
And so you mentioned something before, like year after year, your team's knowing the ins and outs of every single organization. You have a process in place to document all that? Because like I would imagine like employees will leave at some point, right?
Yes.
And those relationships have to get like backfilled with new employees. So how is all of that carried over from one human to the next?
Well, I'd love to be able to say that it's all in this like
System.
super system.
Yep. Right.
Unfortunately, much lives up within the brains,
right.
of our principals and our team members.
Yep.
We have moved to a CRM, and we're obviously encouraging them to document more in there. We obviously have other systems that track all the history and documentation and notes, and so we do try to like maintain that about a client. But a lot is just still in the minds and hearts of the people that work for us, right? So making sure that they do document it. And even the biggest thing is, we're 75 years old, right? So and some of our clients are 40 years old, they've been with us 40, 50 years.
Right.
So what do you do, right? Those people retire. So, we've got a very good transition model in place that when, our partners are retiring, that there is a process of how those clients get transferred to someone else, very, very specifically, like, who's the best personality to match with that client.
Right.
And then, a longer period of time where they make sure that client feels comfortable with the person replacing them. So it is a process, because it's not just like you can call up the client tomorrow and say, oh, Bill retired, Joe's your guy. And he's gonna be like, I don't know, Joe.
Right.
You've got to do it much more
gradually,
intentionally.
I get this question asked often, and I'm going to ask you, like, what do you think HBK is really good at? If there was one thing specifically you're really good at? I know you're pretty diverse and you have a lot of different teams, right? But if you were to be known for this one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, I think if it was the one thing, I think it would be the intimate industry expertise in that space, meaning people come to us because we understand that business, right? And I think we've been pretty good about making sure that if that doesn't fit what we do, we're gonna maybe pass on it. I think we go really deep with that client to make sure that they understand, that we understand everything going on, and then make sure that our best team members are serving that client. And it's always a work in process. It's not perfect, but I think that's a distinction. When you scale up to the size that we are, and still be able to provide what might feel like a pretty intimate service, I think that's probably what we do well. Right. And I think the balance is that as we continue to grow, can we stay true to that?
Yeah.
And that takes work.
It does.
It does. Because I think for anybody that, I could say like we provide great service. Well, I mean, what other one of our competitors wouldn't tell them that,
right.
But
yeah, we say that customer service is a requirement, not really, it shouldn't be your differentiator, what you sell on, even though, it is commonly a differentiator today, because a lot of people don't even know how to do great customer service or manage client relationships well. So,
no. And I mean, one of the models that we've done, which is a little bit different from a firm our size. I mean, we're like the 49th largest, CPA firm in the country. And when you think about it, there's like 44,000.
Right. It's very impressive.
And obviously there's I'd say the top 500 firms have, let's say the lowest in that 500 category is like 30 employees. So if you think about it, there's like 43,500 CPA firms that have less than 30 employees, right? So our model has been we have a lot more offices than our competitors do in terms of, but the number of people in those offices is much, much lower. So instead of having a 150, 200 person office, ours are typically like in that 25 to 50. So it feels like you're being served by a much smaller group, organization, very intimate, with a powerhouse of a team behind it.
Yeah.
And I think the clients don't feel as intimidated by that model.
And so now with billing and all administrative stuff, is all that centralized in one location, or is each entity or location responsible for their own billings and admin?
Yeah.
Stuff?
So that's a good question. So currently we're set up where almost all we have centralized finance department, centralized IT, centralized human resources is all, kind of, in the background doing it for everyone. Frontline billing all of that is still done locally in each office. We are moving to that model in the next year where all of that will be centralized and more efficient. And, we're looking at certain tools around artificial intelligence to help with doing that billing, which is still a little bit more of a manual process on our partners to have to figure out what they're billing and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. We have a client that owns 60 physical therapy chains or locations, and it's a very low margin business, right? The people that are actually doing the physical therapy are doing all the administrative stuff and
documents and
everything. They're doing, dealing with insurance, and if you're really good and you have a lot of volume, then you're hiring an admin or somebody to do that. And what they've done is just centralize everything into their one office. So all the billings and all the appointment setting and everything gets done within one location, and it's made them way more marginable because of it.
No, and that's kind of the model we're moving towards. I think it's when you have a firm that we've done a fair amount of M&A in our space, besides organic growth, and when you do that, you end up with these separate offices that often have a couple of administrative folks and things like that. So by repurposing them, it doesn't mean that our idea of centralization isn't okay. We're going to put 8 people in one building and say that's the billing department. We're going to take the 8 people around the firm that are mastering that task, create a team, and then they might serve the entire firm that way. It doesn't matter where they sit anymore.
Right. So from a scaling perspective, you mentioned M&A. What's been the biggest thing that you've seen or experienced over the past few years that's helped HBK scale? What's really taken the business and amplified it to this new level?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, if you thought about how most professional service organizations, whether they be architects, engineers, CPAs, lawyers, most of it is, the partners, the owners, doing the work,
right?
And then lunch and banker dinners and networking and COIs, right? We're finding that model's changing a bit, in that not every one of our principals who might be really, really good at what they do and very technical or awesome client service aren't the best business developers, right? So we've now brought in a team of folks that are business developers to help generate those introductions. They obviously aren't going to be able to sell something as technical without a team behind them,
right?
But they're opening the doors to allowing our teams to come in and pitch the services and kind of show what value we can create. But they're the ones managing the sales process and making sure that the proposals are happening and following up, right? Because follow-up is always a big issue.
Yep.
So that's one area where we've pivoted by having, sort of non-CPA business developers.
Right. How big is that team?
Right now it's 4.
Okay.
And
how long, I'm sorry to interrupt, how long have you been taking that approach?
The first one we hired, I think, was 4 years ago.
Okay.
And we've been adding to it since then. And it's not perfect, obviously. And it doesn't mean that myself or other partners, everybody has a responsibility to be selling and growing the business. It's just another boost to be able to do that. And I think, we've coupled that with some digital marketing, right? This is what you do, right? So having a little bit of that digital marketing to try to generate, interest. I think clients are shopping differently. Like, they're not just picking up and Googling and calling 5 places. I mean, they're deep down in your website,
correct,
checking you out, like looking, at what you do, like, do you specialize in their industry and all of that. They're trying to find like articles you've read. So we're trying to use some of that digital marketing to drive some of the leads that hopefully end up converting. And, so that's helped with the organic side of it. And then, M&A is just something we're always interested in, finding whether it's other CPA firms that are looking for a bigger platform to be able to offer more services. Because I think that's where we play really well, is that, we can go into a firm that's, 25 to 50 people and, they can only do so much. Right. So we can say, hey, we're going to be able to offer your clients, technology services, wealth management, leadership coaching, all of these things that you can't do, valuation, forensics, whatever. They might be referring all that out. That allows us to expand. M&A is hard though.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's a big time relationship building exercise.
Yes. Yeah, definitely a challenge. And that was going to be my next question, is like, what criteria? I mean, I know it's it varies as well, right? But like, what criteria is there for you to even consider an organization to acquire? Like, I've gone down that path myself, looking to buy other agencies, and it's extremely challenging, especially in my space, because most of it's smoke and mirrors, and you don't know. Like,
Yeah, everybody can fake it, right? To
yeah,
some extent.
yes, basically. So, and then just apples to apples comparison. Like, we're looking for people that are similar in nature, do like the same kind of business we do, but in a vertical, maybe, and it's been challenging. So like, what kind of criteria are you using to guide yourself as to say, okay, yeah, this is something we want to pursue or look at?
Sure. I mean, obviously, like the outreach often starts with looking at firms that either might have something we don't, right? Like, do they offer something to us that we don't,
And have the same client type?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, like for us to go and take, do an M&A of a super small practitioner, that when those clients end up in our firm, either, the price points don't fit, things like that. That's just, we're doing it disjustice to,
Right.
to them and to us. So obviously the client mix needs to fit. But before all of that, right? I mean, from the first meeting, like, is there a culture connection between the partners? Do I feel like I could go have a beer with that person,
Right.
or we kind of have this no a-hole rule, right?
Yes.
Like, so as soon as
We have
any,
that same rule.
yeah, it's a good rule.
I mean, who wants that stress?
No, I mean, because you can't, when you're doing M&A, you can't chase top line. It's very, a lot of places do, right? Let's just keep building the top line. We can keep growing, right? But the cost, the internal cost and the mental cost of doing that incorrectly is painful, right? Like, you don't want to unwind a merger because it's bad for them, because now they've got a bad taste about it. But your own team has a bad, it's kind of like, hey, we made a mistake, like, so now we're exiting them out. So we don't do that. We do a lot of upfront relationship building to make sure that the culture fit. Are they going to fit with us? Do we think that they have if we gave them additional tools, which we feel like we have, could we continue to grow with them? Oftentimes, like even in the CPA world, you could have older partners that are looking for an exit, let's say in the next 2 or 3 years. We don't want like someone else's problems either, right? So we look and say, well, do they have bench strength behind them? Like, especially if we're going into a new market, right? If there's no sense acquiring them, retiring out the partners, and there's no one to run the business, right? So we still need some local, support. So we, have to make sure that there's, some level of bench to be able to work with and grow with. So I would always say, like, we kiss a lot of frogs.
Yes.
Do an M&A.
Yeah. Definitely.
And then, you ultimately get to, I'd probably like to do a little bit more, but we've been doing about 1 a year.
Got it.
And it takes a lot of work. The entire team, like, from sometimes it takes a year from first meeting till closing, and then a whole bunch of work by our ops team, between finance, HR, onboarding, and a huge technology lift, right? Because we don't let them stay on all their platforms, right? Like, everything has to migrate over, because the only way they can share and have this one firm concept is if everything's the same.
Right.
So we're very, diligent about, which is opposite of like a PE sort of roll-up strategy where, okay, we're going to acquire them and they can just stay on everything they're doing. We make everybody move
to your systems.
To our systems.
Yeah. And how important is it for the CEO or the owner to stay on? Is that like a requirement, or are you usually just trying to get the firm and get the bench to run the organization, removing the CEO's salary and distribution?
Yeah. So that's obviously, in an Excel model, that's the best way, right?
Right, yes.
It's not the best way for sort of the long-term play, because obviously we're dealing with a lot of personal client relationships, and some of them are like 34, so depending on how well they've transitioned internally, are they still the guy or the gal?
Right. Yep.
Managing those relationships. So most oftentimes we can have a partner group of 5 people, right? And you can have 2 of them that are, feel like they have a 2-year window they want to work. One has a 5-year window, and the other 2 maybe like a 15-year window. So they all have different wants and needs, right? So we have to kind of reverse engineer like where they want to be,
right,
and how to make that happen. And usually what we'll do is we'll just have a transition period. So keep them, working with us for, 2-3 years or whatever that, maybe phasing down, giving them a taste of what retirement would be like. And, we structure the deal, because if there's younger partners, we want them to be part of our growth. So
Right.
we usually like do an equity, part of theirs will be an equity swap into our business. So they become partners with us. And then we might buy out the older partners, so the deal gets a little bit more complex in terms of who we buy out versus who comes in as like, more of an equity swap.
Right.
Yeah.
And in CPA land, there's a lot like of firms that have multiple partners, right?
Yes.
And then, so that's interesting. If you're looking at like an acquisition in IT to grow that space or grow within a specific segment of IT, let's say you get into cybersecurity. Right? Are you in cybersecurity now or no?
We do cybersecurity.
You do?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. All right. But for conversational purposes, if you're going to buy a cybersecurity firm, does it matter if there's, is it better for you if there's one partner versus multiple partners? Does that matter? Is that even a consideration or?
No, listen, I think it's all one person often makes it easier, right? Like you have one person, you just have to understand, what that person's like life goals are, what their end goal is.
Yep.
When you have multiple partners, you then have to take all of them into account because oftentimes deals don't happen because those partners don't even agree
Right.
on where they want to go. Like one wants to sell, one doesn't.
Yeah.
One wants out in a year because, maybe he feels, he or she feels they're missing out on life. They've been working too hard. So now they want to take it easy.
Yeah.
You have to kind of look at everybody. So the more partners involved, actually, the longer it takes.
Yeah.
And the more, I'd say the more stress on us to
especially if they're family, right?
Yes.
Because we have a situation, one of our clients, four brothers or partners, and you could see like one or two of them want to get out and the other two want to stay in. And when it comes to an acquisition, what happens then, right? Like,
yeah. And we're okay with those situations where maybe somebody just wants to be out sooner and we'll try to figure that out. But we do have to kind of make sure we understand that, like, we did an acquisition in the fall where, there's some really significant client relationships. I mean, large dollar client relationships tied with some folks that it's important that we make sure, we're very intentional about making sure that those clients feel very, very comfortable with us. I mean, including to the point where I went out and visited those clients and made sure that they knew higher leadership and because we didn't want them to feel like, oh, my guy that I've been working with for 40 years is going to retire.
Right.
And, does that mean I should go look at something else,
Right.
look for someone else. So we want to make sure they're real comfortable.
Is there a specific like entry service that you find yourselves doing? Like, okay, most of our clients will hire us for this to start a relationship. Like what's the big, okay, like, is it usually just taking over their returns and tax planning for the year? Is that the entry offering, would you say?
I would still say that for us, it still seems to be the majority of the point of entry. I would say a big second to that is clients are now finding issues with having internal staffing of their accounting departments.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really stuck on their internal accounting. And we've got them, kind of a group in the firm that can take over that day to day.
Yep.
So in some cases, we've taken over the day to day accounting, and they have a separate CPA firm like doing their, taxes or their audit.
Got it.
And we just manage their internal accounting, and we're good with that.
Yeah.
Are
you doing billing on their behalf as well? Like, are you doing like bookkeeping and billing and stuff? Like,
so in some cases we are. It depends on the type of business and whether we feel like that will fit our model. High volume billing, no. But we do have a strategic relationship. Like, we do a lot of multi-doctor physician practices and whatnot. So we have a medical billing strategic partnership where we, can bring them in to, take that physician's office billings off their plate. So we can do the back office, manage their payroll, manage their accounting, but then take their billing out, put it with our strategic alliance, and, it's all managed together.
Got it.
Yeah.
Are most of your relationships recurring revenue, like billed on a monthly or quarterly basis, or
pretty much?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we still have a lot of, annual billings, but I'd say most clients are getting billed monthly or quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving more and more towards what we would call, these fixed price agreements where, we agree to a scope of services for this amount of money a month. There's still, projects and things like that are scoped out differently, but a lot of, like, for instance, that outsourced accounting is a monthly, billed on the first of the month. Every month they know what the bill is. Our IT service is often the same way, right? Like they agree to a subscription, and they know that, okay, I'm going to pay $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, but all of that's being taken care of for me.
Right.
We have specialized areas like business valuation, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, that maybe that's a little bit different, or maybe sometimes it's hourly, like if we're doing like a forensic investigation. So there are points where fixed fee is not going to work because we just don't know what we're getting into.
Yeah.
But where possible, on the CPA firm, I'd say 80 to 90% of our revenue is probably recurring.
Yeah.
Obviously there's those one-offs projects we're doing. Somebody has selling their company and they want us to represent them on the sell side, and we're doing all this extra work, and then oftentimes like the only thing that's left after that is the family. Like we're taking care of the family because they've sold their business out.
Right.
So we have that one big year of extra work, and then and we're okay with that.
Yeah.
We know that those are going to be ebbs and flows.
Do you keep those relationships, or do you sunset them?
Yeah, you mean in terms of like
so the family's, it's just a family now, right? Like
no, we keep them.
Yeah.
I mean, because one, again, when you have a multidisciplinary firm like us, okay, we've done all this great work for you on the on the CPA side and managed your business, and now you sold for $50 million. Well, now our wealth management firm can come in and say, okay, how can you deploy that 50 million so that you, your kids, and your grandkids have this legacy? So you spent all these years building this family business, you exited at a nice number. How do we take that wealth and make sure that it lives in perpetuity for your family?
Right.
So that's where, okay, maybe we have less CPA style work to do, but our wealth might jump in, and our estate planning, and we have some really we have our own in-house attorneys and tax folks that specialize in really complicated estates and planning to make sure they minimize taxes for the future. So I think we don't sunset those relationships. I mean, we keep them, and then there's the serial entrepreneurs, right? They'll sell a business and they'll say they're going to retire and buy a house in a tropical location and live happily ever after, but within 6 months they have an itch. And they're either getting back into another business or investing in someone else's business. They're doing something. They just have it in them.
Right.
So
makes sense. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today. Appreciate your time. It was great to learn a lot about you and HBK. The firm is awesome. Sounds great. How can people get in touch with the firm?
Oh yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure to get to talk about the firm and hang out with you for a little bit.
Yeah,
but I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I believe it's LinkedIn, Tommy CPA, which is, or you can get me on my email, which is tangelo@hbkcpa.com.
Awesome. Okay.
So
cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.